The northern lights danced across the Finnish sky, painting the snow-covered forest in shades of green and blue. Dr. Elena Virtanen paid them no mind as she sat hunched over her computer screens inside the small observatory she had built with her own hands. While other astronomers worked in grand facilities with giant radio telescopes, Elena preferred her modest setup hidden among the pines. "Come on, show me something interesting tonight," she whispered, adjusting her headphones. Elena was different from other scientists. Where they filtered out background noise to focus on clear signals from space, she listened to everything. She had built special receivers that captured frequencies others ignored. Her colleagues at the university called her methods strange, but Elena didn't care. She believed there were patterns in the noise, like whispers easy to miss if you weren't paying attention. Tonight was her third straight night without proper sleep. Dark circles framed her eyes, but she couldn't stop. Something had been tickling the edge of her equipment's range for days, a pattern so faint it was barely there. "There you are again," she said, noticing a slight change in the sound coming through her headphones. To most people, it would sound like random static, but Elena had trained her ears over 15 years of listening to the sky. This wasn't random. It had rhythm. She typed commands into her computer, focusing her equipment on that specific frequency. The pattern became clearer, a series of pulses that repeated exactly the same way every 43 seconds. Elena's heart began to race. Natural cosmic events didn't create perfect patterns like this. Her hands shook slightly as she started recording the signal and running it through her analysis programs. "Please don't be a satellite or some military transmission," she muttered. After 20 minutes, her computer beeped with results. The signal wasn't coming from Earth or any known human technology. It was coming from beyond our solar system, from a star 68 light-years away. Elena sat back in her chair, her mind racing. Could this finally be it? The discovery every astronomer dreamed about but few believed would happen in their lifetime. She reached for her phone to call her old professor but stopped. The scientific community had laughed at her before. They would demand proof, and they would want to verify her findings with proper equipment. No, she needed more data first. Across the galaxy, in a vast underwater city built from luminous crystal and living coral, Ambassador Kelu swam slowly into the emergency chamber. The normally bright bioluminescent patterns on his blue skin had dimmed with exhaustion. Around him, 50 other Nirval elders floated in a circle, their tendrils gently moving with the currents. "The 6th evacuation ship has failed," Kelu announced, his voice translated through the water by subtle vibrations all Nirval could feel. The same disruption pattern disabled its navigation systems once it reached the outer atmosphere. An elder named Maril, her skin wrinkled with age, moved forward. "How much time remains?" A holographic image appeared in the center of their circle, a star glowing an angry red with strange dark patches spreading across its surface like disease. 32 days until complete stellar collapse," Kelu replied. "Maybe less." The Nirval had discovered the problem 2 years earlier. Their sun, which should have been stable for another billion years, was dying. Something was eating it from the inside, causing a chain reaction no one had predicted. Soon it would collapse and then explode, destroying their homeworld and the 5 billion Nirval who lived there. "What of the distress signals?" another elder asked. Kelu's skin flashed a pattern that expressed deep sadness. "We have been broadcasting on all frequencies recognized by the Galactic Concord for 18 months. No response." The Nirval were not members of the Concord, the alliance of 17 advanced species that controlled most of the galaxy. Their civilization had been discovered only 30 years earlier, and they were still classified as an emerging species, despite their advanced technology. "We must try again," Kelu said. "I've prepared a new message with more detailed data about our situation. I will broadcast across all known frequencies, including those not commonly monitored." Some elders flashed colors of doubt. Using unusual frequencies was considered primitive by Concord standards. No advanced species would waste resources listening to the noisy parts of the spectrum, but they had no choice. "Do what you must. Muriel said. We have nothing to lose. Her observatory, Elena worked through the night and into the morning. The signal was becoming clearer as she refined her equipment. It wasn't just pulses anymore. There was complex data embedded within them. Her computer worked to decode the information. Whatever it was, it followed mathematical principles, another sign of intelligence. As the sun rose over the Finnish forest, bathing her small observatory in golden light, her screen filled with images. Elena gasped. The computer had translated part of the signal into visual data. On her screen was what looked like a star system, a sun, and 9 planets. But something was wrong with the star. Dark spots covered its surface in patterns that no natural stellar process could explain. Below the image were strange symbols, writing she couldn't understand, but definitely not random. This was a message. Elena reached for her phone with trembling hands and dialed a number. Professor Kuznetsov? It's Elena Virtanen. I need you to look at something. No, this can't wait. I've received a signal from another star system. I think someone is calling for help. As she spoke, her computer continued decoding. More images appeared. Crystal cities underwater, strange blue creatures with tentacles, and ships, trying to leave a planet only to be disabled by invisible forces. Elena didn't know it yet, but she had just changed humanity's destiny forever. While the giant radio telescopes of Earth space agencies pointed elsewhere, her small, custom-built receivers had heard what no one else could, a desperate plea from across the stars. And on a dying world 68 light-years away, Ambassador, Kalu was about to receive something no one expected, a response from a species no one in the Galactic Concord had ever encountered before. The humans had heard the call, and they were answering. 3 days after Elena's discovery, her small observatory was no longer quiet. Government vehicles lined the narrow dirt road leading to the building, and men and women in suits walked in and out, carrying equipment and speaking in hushed tones. Inside, Elena sat at her desk, explaining her findings to a group of officials for what felt like the 100th time. As I've already told you, the signal is clearly artificial, she said, pushing her glasses up. The mathematical patterns cannot occur naturally, and the images, she pointed to her screen, these show a star system in trouble. A stern-looking woman from the United Nations Space Agency leaned forward. Dr. Virtanen, why did none of our official listening stations detect this signal? We have equipment worth billions of dollars specifically designed to search for extraterrestrial communications. Elena tried not to show her frustration. Because you filter out what you consider noise. My receivers are designed differently. I keep everything and look for patterns others might miss. A military officer spoke next. How do we know this? Isn't some elaborate hoax? Or perhaps a misinterpretation of natural phenomena? Before Elena could answer, the door opened and a tall man with gray hair entered. Professor Alexei Kuznetsov, her old teacher and mentor, now the head of Russia's space program, walked in with purpose. It's real, he announced to the room. We've confirmed it from our station in Siberia using Dr. Virtanen's frequency specifications, and the Chinese have just reported the same. He nodded respectfully to Elena. You were right. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Humanity was not alone in the universe, and their first contact was a distress call. We need to respond, Elena said, breaking the silence. They're asking for help. How can you be sure? The military officer asked. We can't even read their language. The message repeats the same sequence, showing their son's deterioration and failed evacuation attempts, Elena explained. You don't need to understand the words to see they're facing extinction. Professor Kuznetsov nodded. Elena is right, and we've already sent a simple response using mathematical sequences to show intelligence. They've acknowledged receipt. The officials exchanged nervous glances. Then what's next? The UN representative asked. We go to them, Kuznetsov said simply. We have the experimental Prometheus ship with the fusion drive. It was meant for a Mars mission next year, but it can be repurposed. That's impossible, the military officer objected. Even with our newest technology, it would take decades to reach a star 68 light-years away. Not necessarily, said a new voice. A Chinese woman in her 40s entered the room carrying a tablet. Dr. Wei Zhang, she introduced herself. Beijing Aerospace University. We've been working on theoretical faster-than-light travel based on quantum tunneling. It's never been tested with a full-sized ship, but the math is sound. Elena's eyes widened. You're the quantum physicist who wrote the paper on spatial folding. Dr. Zhang nodded with a slight smile. The same. And your discovery gives us a reason to try our theories in practice. Ambassador Kelu swam quickly through the crystal corridors of the communication hub, his skin flashing with excitement, patterns his assistants had not seen in months. They responded, he announced, entering the main chamber where other Nirval worked tirelessly at their stations. The signal is primitive but undeniably intelligent. Who responded? Asked Muril, who had been overseeing the ongoing broadcast efforts. We don't know, Kelu admitted. The signal doesn't match any known conquered species. It's coming from a star system not listed in our databases as having intelligent life. He activated a holographic display showing the response, a simple sequence of prime numbers, followed by basic mathematical equations, and then a crude representation of two different solar systems with a line connecting them. They're coming to help, Kelu interpreted, whoever they are. Another Nirval, the chief scientist Tala, studied the transmission. The signal characteristics are strange. No advanced civilization would use such basic methods. Perhaps they're not advanced by conquered standards, Muril suggested. But they heard us when no one else did. Kelu's skin flashed in agreement. I've already sent our location and more detailed information about our situation. But we should inform the Concord that we've made contact with an unknown species. The Concord left us to die, Tala said bitterly, her skin darkening. Why should we inform them of anything? Because whoever these beings are, they'll need safe passage, Kelu explained. And because if they can help us, the Conquered should know there are those who answer calls they ignore. Light years away, in the busy halls of the Galactic Concord's massive space station, an insectoid being named Vexer reviewed the report from the monitoring outpost near the Nirval system. Interesting, he chittered to himself, his compound eyes processing the information rapidly. Very interesting indeed. The Ticton were known for their curiosity and scientific minds. As the Concord's chief xenodiplomat, Vexer had overseen first contact with 3 species during his career. But this situation was unprecedented. Ambassador, his assistant, entered the room. The council is ready to hear your assessment. Vexer gathered his notes and followed the assistant to the Grand Council chamber, where representatives from the 17-member species waited. The Arch-Counselor, a tall crystalline being, acknowledged him with a slight nod. Diplomat Vexer explained the situation to us. The Arch-Counselor's voice resonated. The Nirval claim to have made contact with an unknown intelligent species? Yes, Arch-Counselor, Vexer replied. The Nirval emergency broadcasts have apparently been received by a previously undocumented spacefaring race. According to the transmission data, they call themselves humans. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The discovery of a new intelligent species was rare in the Concord's long history. How is this possible? Asked a representative of the Malurian Collective. Our survey ships have mapped that sector extensively. There are no advanced civilizations there. That is what makes this so fascinating. Vexer clicked his mandibles excitedly. These humans must have developed recently or remained hidden. Somehow. But more importantly, they detected signals that our own monitoring stations classified as background noise. Are they coming to the Nirval system? The Arch-Counselor asked. Yes, Vexer confirmed, and according to their communications, they intend to help with the evacuation. The council chamber erupted in discussions. The Nirval sun's impending collapse had been deemed a natural disaster beyond saving. Most Concord members had already accepted the extinction of the species as inevitable. I request permission to intercept these humans, Vexor said when the noise died down, to assess their capabilities and intentions. The Arch-Counselor considered this. Granted, but remember our protocols for emerging species. If they are primitive, they must be guided carefully, or quarantined. Vexer bowed his insectoid head, in acknowledgement, but his mind was already racing with questions. How had these humans heard what the Concorde could not? What made them different? And why would they risk themselves to save a species they had never met? He would find out. And he suspected that the answers might change the Concorde forever. The Prometheus looked nothing like the spaceships in movies. It was not sleek or beautiful. The ship resembled a series of connected metal tubes with a massive engine section that took up half its length. Built in orbit around Earth, it had never been meant for interstellar travel. But now, with the new quantum drive installed, it was humanity's first starship. Elena floated through the narrow corridor, still getting used to zero gravity. After 2 weeks of intensive training, she had learned the basics of space travel, but her stomach still didn't agree with the lack of up and down. "You'll get used to it," said Alexei, who passed by her with the ease of someone who had spent years in space. The Russian cosmonaut had volunteered to captain the mission despite being in his 60s. "First week is always the worst." Elena nodded and continued making her way to the command center, where Dr. Zhang was running final checks on the quantum drive. "Will it work?" Elena asked, watching the Chinese scientist tap rapidly on multiple screens. "In theory, yes," Dr. Zhang replied without looking up. "The drive creates a tunnel through space-time, allowing us to travel 68 light-years in approximately 3 weeks. And if the theory is wrong?" Dr. Zhang finally looked at Elena. "Then we learn something new about physics in our final moments." Elena appreciated the scientist's honesty. Everyone on the ship, a crew of 12 from 7 countries, had volunteered, knowing the risks. The Prometheus would either make history or become a cautionary tale about human overreach. "We're ready for the first jump," Alexei announced over the intercom. "Everyone to your stations." Elena strapped herself into her seat in the science bay. Her job was to monitor communications, to listen for the alien signals that only she had originally detected. The countdown began and Elena closed her eyes. There was no dramatic flash or sound when the quantum drive activated. Just a strange moment when Elena felt like her body was being stretched and compressed at the same time. Then it was over. "Jump. Successful," Alexei's voice came through the speakers. "All systems functioning. We are approximately 7 light-years from Earth." Elena checked her instruments. They were operating in a region of space no human had ever visited before. The stars outside looked unfamiliar. "Receiving an unknown signal," she reported, hearing a strange pattern through her headphones. "It's not the Nearval." Vexer's ship, the Swift Inquiry, detected the human vessel's quantum signature as soon as it appeared. "Fascinating," the insectoid diplomat chittered, studying the readings. "Their quantum technology is crude yet functional, most unexpected for an unknown species." His science officer, another Tiktan named Kizik, analyzed the data. "Their navigation is imprecise. They've emerged 2 light days off their intended trajectory. Nevertheless, they've achieved what should be impossible for a species we've never encountered," Vexer noted. "Send the contact greeting and prepare for a meeting." The Swift Inquiry moved closer to the human ship, broadcasting the standard Concorde. First contact message, a series of mathematical and visual signals designed to establish basic communication. On the Prometheus, Elena was translating the new signal. "It's structured differently from the Nearval messages," she told Alexei and Dr. Zhang. "More precise, almost formal." The screens displayed the translated images, diagrams explaining a numbering system, basic physics concepts, and finally, a representation of 2 ships meeting. "They want to talk," Alexei said. "Can we communicate with them?" Dr. Zhang nodded. "We can use the same mathematical language they're using, and we've prepared basic visual dictionaries." 12 hours later, the 2 ships were positioned side by side in the emptiness of space. A shuttle from the alien vessel docked with the Prometheus, and humanity experienced its first face-to-face contact with extraterrestrial life. Vexer's appearance shocked the human crew despite their mental preparation. The Tiktan stood nearly 7 feet tall on 4 legs with an upper body that featured 4 arms and a head dominated by compound eyes. His exoskeleton shimmered with a greenish tint under the ship's lights. Using a translation device that converted his chittering speech to mathematical and visual symbols on a screen, Vexor introduced himself. I am Diplomat Vexor of the Galactic Concord, a union of 17 spacefaring species, the screen translated. Your journey to help the Nirval is unprecedented and raises many questions. Alexei stepped forward as the mission commander. We are humans from Earth. We received the Nirval distress call and are responding as any civilization should when others are in danger. Vexor's head tilted in what the humans would later learn was an expression of surprise. The Concord's equipment did not detect any meaningful signals from the Nirval system. How did your less advanced technology succeed where ours failed? Dr. Zhang answered this time. We believe the explanation lies not in our technology, but in our biology. Over the next few hours, the human scientists showed Vexor the original recordings Elena had made. They explained how human brains were uniquely equipped to recognize patterns in what seemed like random noise, an evolutionary trait from their days as both predator and prey. Our ancestors needed to spot camouflaged predators and hidden food sources, Elena explained. We evolved to see patterns others might miss. This ability transferred to our technology because we built it to extend our natural senses, not replace them. Vexor performed tests displaying various patterns and frequencies to the humans and recording their responses. The results astonished him. You perceive information in ways no known species can, he chittered rapidly as his translation device struggled to keep up. There are entire frequency ranges and pattern structures the Concord has classified as cosmic noise that you interpret as meaningful data. The implications were enormous. The Concord, for all its advanced technology and combined knowledge of 17 species, had fundamental blind spots, gaps in perception that humans naturally filled. This explains why you alone heard the Nirval, Vexor continued. Their emergency signals used frequencies our systems automatically filter out as background noise. To us, they were shouting into the void. To you, they were speaking clearly. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. How many other voices might be out there that no one is hearing? Vexor's compound eyes seemed to study her with new interest. That, Dr. Virtanen, is precisely what the Concord must now consider. Your species has introduced a variable we never knew was missing. The humans exchanged glances, suddenly understanding. Their place in the galaxy had just shifted. They weren't just an unknown species answering a distress call. They were something the advanced Galactic Concord had never encountered before, beings who could hear what no one else could. We still need to help the Nirval, Alexei reminded everyone. Their sun is collapsing. Yes, Vexor agreed. And I now believe you may perceive solutions the Concord has missed. I will accompany your ship to the Nirval system. What Vexor didn't tell them was that other members of the Concord were not as curious or open-minded as he was. Some were already arguing that a species with such different perceptual abilities might be a threat to the established order. As the Prometheus prepared for its next quantum jump, messages were already flying across the galaxy about the strange. Humans who could hear what no one else could and what that might mean for everyone. After 2 more quantum jumps, the Prometheus arrived at the Nirval system. The sight that greeted them through the ship's viewports left everyone silent. The Nirval sun glowed an angry red, with dark patches swirling across its surface like oil on water. It looked sick and unstable. The collapse is accelerating, Vexor observed, his insect-like mandibles clicking rapidly. The star has deteriorated significantly since the Concord's last observation. Elena studied the readings from the ship's sensors. According to these measurements, the Nirval have less than 2 weeks before complete stellar failure, not the month they estimated. Alexei frowned. Can their evacuation ships get everyone out in time? That's the problem, Vexor explained. Their ships keep experiencing navigation failures during launch. Something in the solar radiation interferes with their systems. The Prometheus moved closer to the 4th planet in the system, a beautiful, blue-green world mostly covered by ocean. Even from orbit, they could see the massive underwater cities glowing through the clear waters. A transmission came through, and Elena quickly adjusted her equipment to receive it. They're sending docking coordinates, she announced, and A greeting from Ambassador Kelu. The Nirval ambassador appeared on the main screen. His blue tentacled form was strange to human eyes, but there was something unmistakably intelligent and dignified in the way he carried himself. The bioluminescent patterns on his skin flashed in what Elena recognized as a formal greeting pattern. Humans of Earth. Kelu's message translated on the screen. Your arrival brings hope where there was none. We welcome you and your conquered companion to our world, though we fear you have come only to witness our final days. The Prometheus landed on a floating platform above one of the largest Nirval cities. The human crew wore special breathing masks, as the Nirval atmosphere had slightly more oxygen than Earth's. Ambassador Kelu, along with several other Nirval officials, greeted them in a chamber filled with just enough water to allow the aquatic aliens to remain comfortable while still permitting the humans to stand. You heard us when no one else would listen, Kelu said, his skin flashing with gratitude patterns. For that alone, our people will remember yours, even if our civilization ends. We didn't come all this way just to say goodbye, Alexei replied firmly. We came to help. Kelu led them to a large room filled with holographic displays, showing the evacuation efforts. Massive ships sat in launching bays around the planet, each capable of carrying millions of Nirval to safety. But every time a ship attempted to leave the atmosphere, it experienced catastrophic navigation failures. We've tried everything, explained Tala, the chief scientist. Different trajectories, modified shielding, even changing the frequency of our navigation systems. Nothing works. It's as if space itself becomes unstable around our planet when our ships attempt to leave. Dr. Zhang studied the technical data. Your quantum navigation systems are far more advanced than ours. They should be able to compensate for standard spatial distortions. That's what puzzles us, Tala admitted. Our sensors detect nothing unusual, yet our ships become disoriented the moment they reach the upper atmosphere. Elena had been quiet, listening not just to the words but to the sounds in the room, the subtle vibrations of the Nirval communication, the hum of their technology. Something about it all felt familiar to her pattern-seeking mind. It's the same problem as the distress signal, she suddenly said, looking up from her tablet. You can't detect what's happening because it exists in your perceptual blind spots. Vexor turned to her. Explain, Dr. Virtanen. Elena connected her tablet to the Nirval holographic system. When I first detected your signal, it was in frequencies that most equipment filters out as background noise. I think something similar is happening here. She displayed the sensor readings from one of the failed evacuation attempts. There's a pattern in what your systems dismiss as random fluctuations. Look at these energy spikes. They occur in a specific sequence right before each navigation failure. The Nirval scientists couldn't see what Elena was pointing out until she highlighted the pattern. It was like trying to show a colorblind person the difference between red and green. The dying sun is creating quantum fields that cascade in unusual ways, Dr. Zhang realized, building on Elena's observation. They're invisible to your perception, but clear to ours. Can you help us see them? Kelu asked, hope flickering across his skin. Better, Alexei said. We can build a detection system based on human perception patterns. It won't be elegant, but it should warn your ships when these quantum cascades are forming. For the next 48 hours, the human crew worked alongside Nirval engineers. They built crude but effective warning systems using a combination of Earth technology and Nirval components. Elena and Dr. Zhang designed algorithms based on human pattern recognition to detect the quantum distortions, while Alexei and the other crew members helped integrate these systems into the Nirval ships. They tested the system on a small scout ship. For the first time, it successfully navigated through the upper atmosphere and into stable orbit. Cheers and flashing bioluminescence filled the Nirval command center. Kelu's skin glowed with bright patterns of joy. It works. We can begin the evacuation. But the celebration was short-lived. Tala approached with new readings from their sun. The collapse is accelerating even faster than we feared, she said, her skin dimming to dark blue. We have 5 days at most. Even with all our evacuation ships now functional, We can only save approximately 1/3 of our population. The room fell silent as the cruel math sank in. Over 3 billion Nirval would be left behind to die. There must be another way, Elena insisted, looking at the holographic displays of the Nirval ships. What if we could create a larger pathway, a temporary wormhole big enough for multiple ships to pass through simultaneously? Dr. Zhang considered this. Theoretically, the Prometheus's quantum drive could be modified to create a larger tunnel through space-time. But the energy requirements would be enormous, and the ship wasn't designed for that kind of strain. Could it be done with Nirval technology supporting it? Alexei asked. Perhaps, Tala said, her scientific mind already calculating possibilities. But whoever controlled the process would need to remain with the drive until all ships passed through. They couldn't escape themselves. Elena and Alexei exchanged looks. The same thought had occurred to both of them. A way to save the Nirval, but at a terrible cost. Before they could discuss it further, Vexer received an urgent communication from his ship in orbit. A Concorde fleet has entered the system, he announced, his normally calm demeanor shaken. They're not here to help with the evacuation. They've come to ensure it fails. Why would the Concorde try to stop the evacuation? Elena demanded, looking at Vexer with disbelief. The insectoid diplomat's compound eyes seemed to dim. Some members of the Concorde High Council believe that the Nirval situation is problematic, and now that humans have become involved, the complications have increased. Problematic? Alexei's voice rose in anger. We're talking about billions of lives. Vexer's mandibles clicked rapidly. The Concorde maintains balance in the galaxy. Some species view the Nirval as too different, too unpredictable, and humans, you represent an even greater unknown. Your perceptual abilities threaten centuries of established order. Ambassador Kalu's skin darkened to a deep blue. So they would rather let us die than face change. I did not agree with this decision, Vexer said firmly. That is why I am here. But we have little time before the Concorde fleet deploys inhibitor, fields that will prevent any ships from leaving this system. The room erupted in urgent discussions. The evacuation had to be accelerated immediately. The first Nirval ships were already launching, carrying thousands of refugees toward temporary safety in the outer reaches of their solar system. We need more time, Tala said, her tentacles moving anxiously over the control panels. Even with all ships functioning, we can only evacuate a fraction of our people before either the star collapses or the Concorde blockade becomes effective. Elena turned to Dr. Zhang. We need to revisit the wormhole idea. Could the Prometheus create a stable passage large enough for multiple ships to pass through at once? The Chinese physicist did rapid calculations on her tablet. With modifications and support from Nirval technology, yes. But the stress on the quantum drive would be catastrophic. It would overload within minutes. Could the drive be stabilized manually? Alexei asked. Dr. Zhang hesitated. Theoretically, if someone were physically present to make continuous adjustments, the wormhole could remain stable long enough for several large ships to pass through. But whoever did this would not survive the drive's eventual failure. A heavy silence fell over the group. They were talking about a suicide mission. I'll do it, Alexei said quietly. I've had a good life. I'm the most experienced with space operations. Elena started to object, but the determined look in the Russian cosmonaut's eyes stopped her. He had already made his decision. Ambassador. Kalu's skin flashed with patterns that the translation system interpreted as deep respect. Your willingness to sacrifice for strangers from another world honors you, Captain Kuznetsov. We will remember this always. Vexer received another alert from his ship. The Concorde fleet is deploying into standard blockade formation. We have approximately 10 hours before they can establish a complete barrier. Then we need to move now, Alexei said. Dr. Zhang, what modifications does the Prometheus need? The next few hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. While the first wave of Nirval ships continued launching using the human-designed warning systems, the Prometheus was connected to 3 massive Nirval power generators. Dr. Zhang and Tala worked together to reconfigure the quantum drive, pushing it far beyond its original specifications. Elena stayed close to Alexei as he prepared for his final mission. "There has to be another way," she said as they stood in a quiet corner of the Nirval command center. "Maybe an automated system or—" "Elena," Alexei placed a hand on her shoulder. "You know there's no time to develop alternatives. The drive requires human perception to adjust for the quantum fluctuations. It needs someone who can see the patterns that machines and other species miss." Tears welled in Elena's eyes. "It's not fair. You're giving your life for people you just met." Alexei smiled gently. "Isn't that what makes us human? We heard their call when no one else could. Now we're answering it the only way we know how, by helping, whatever the cost." In the meantime, Vexer had been in continuous communication with the Concord fleet, attempting to delay their operations. Finally, he approached the humans with unexpected news. "I've informed the Concord leadership that I've chosen to ally with humans and the Nirval," he announced. "I've also transmitted evidence of the conspiracy to eliminate the Nirval and suppress knowledge of human abilities. Some commanders in the fleet are now questioning their orders." "Will it be enough to stop them?" Alexei asked. "No," Vexer admitted. "But it has created confusion and delayed their deployment. Some ships may even break formation. By the time the modified Prometheus was ready, over 1 million Nirval had been evacuated using conventional means. But billions remained, and time was running out. The star's condition was deteriorating rapidly, with massive solar flares already reaching halfway to the Nirval homeworld. The plan was set. The Prometheus would position itself near the edge of the solar system and create a massive wormhole. The largest Nirval ships, each carrying millions of refugees, would pass through to a safe location that Vexer had identified, beyond the Concord's immediate reach. Alexei boarded the Prometheus alone. The rest of the human crew would escape. On a Nirval vessel, as he settled into the captain's chair, he opened a communication channel to the Nirval command center. "Drive systems online. Power levels at maximum. Beginning wormhole sequence in 3 minutes," he reported calmly. On the main screen, he could see Elena, Dr. Zhang, and the others watching him. None of them tried to talk him out of his decision. They understood what was at stake. "The Concord fleet is moving to intercept," Vexer warned. "Several ships have broken formation, but the majority are still following orders." "They'll be too late," Alexei said with determination. "The wormhole will be open in 90 seconds. The Prometheus shuddered as its modified quantum drive powered up to unprecedented levels. Warning alarms blared throughout the ship, but Alexei calmly overrode them. Outside, space itself began to distort as energies no human ship was ever meant to control were channeled through the drive systems. "Wormhole forming," Alexei announced, his hands flying over the controls, making constant adjustments based on the patterns only a human could perceive in the quantum fluctuations. A massive tear in space-time appeared in front of the Prometheus, a swirling tunnel of energy large enough for even the biggest Nirval ships to pass through. The first evacuation vessel approached, carrying over 3 million refugees. "It's working." Elena's voice came through the communication system. "The first ship is entering the wormhole." Alexei smiled, even as the ship around him began to break, apart from the strain. His monitors showed the Concord fleet approaching rapidly, but they would be too late to stop what was already in motion. As the second and third massive Nirval ships entered the wormhole, Alexei felt a strange peace. The Prometheus was failing around him, systems overloading, hull integrity compromised, but through the viewport he could see billions of lives being saved. "Tell them our story," he said to Elena as the communication system began to fail. "Tell them that humans heard when no one else would listen." The last thing Alexei saw before the Prometheus's systems completely overloaded was the fourth enormous refugee ship entering the wormhole, carrying billions more to safety. In the Nirval command center, Elena watched as the Prometheus exploded in a flash of quantum energy. But the wormhole remained stable just long enough for the final evacuation ship to pass through before collapsing. Against all odds, the majority of the Nirval population had escaped, saved by the sacrifice of one human who believed that hearing a cry for help meant you had to answer it. 6 months after the destruction of the Nirval homeworld, Elena Virtanen stood at the window of the Concord Ambassador Hall, looking out at the unfamiliar stars. The massive space station served as the headquarters for the Galactic Concord, home to representatives from all member species. Now, for the first time, it included a human. Elena still found it hard to believe she was here. The quiet astronomer from Finland, who had once built her own radio receivers in a small observatory, now represented all of humanity to the galaxy. Ambassador Virtanen, a voice called from behind her. The council is ready to begin. Elena turned to see Vexer, who now served as her advisor and friend in the complex world of galactic politics. The insectoid diplomat had risked everything to help humans and the Nirval, and had faced serious consequences within the Concord hierarchy. But his actions had also forced the 17 member species to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves. "I'm ready," Elena replied, straightening the formal blue jacket that had become the unofficial uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. On her lapel she wore 2 pins, the flag of Earth and a small model of the Prometheus. Together they walked into the Grand Council chamber, where representatives from all conquered species sat in a circle. At the center of the room floated a holographic display of the galaxy, highlighting the newly established Nirval colony and Earth's solar system. The Arch-Counselor, who had been replaced after the scandal caused by the attempted sabotage of the Nirval evacuation, acknowledged Elena with a respectful nod. "Ambassador Virtanen, we welcome you to this historic session." The crystalline being's voice resonated throughout the chamber. "Today marks the official recognition of humanity as an associate member of the Galactic Concord." Elena took her place at the designated position. She felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. In the 6 months since the Nirval rescue, Earth had been introduced to the wider galaxy. The transition had not been easy, with fear and excitement spreading across human civilization in equal measure. But the heroism of Alexei Kuznetsov and the salvation of the Nirval had given humanity a respected place among the stars from the beginning. "Thank you, Arch-Counselor," Elena responded. "Earth is honored to join this ancient community of worlds." Before we proceed with the formal ceremonies, the Arch-Counselor continued, "Ambassador Kelu of the Nirval wishes to address the Council." The blue tentacled form of Kelu moved forward, his skin glowing with formal patterns. The Nirval had established a new colony in a star system not far from Earth, naming it New Nirval. They too had been granted associate member status in the Concord. "Honored representatives," Kelu began, his translator converting his vibrations into the common language of the Concord. 6 months ago, my species faced extinction. Our calls for help went unheard by the galaxy at large, except by a species previously unknown to any of us. His skin flashed with patterns of respect as he turned toward Elena. The humans did not ignore our plea. They did not calculate political advantages or measure our worth to them. They simply heard us and came, and one human, Captain Alexei Kuznetsov, gave his life so that billions of my people could live. The chamber was silent as Kelu continued. "Today I am pleased to announce that the first city on New Nirval has been completed. We have named it Kuznetsov, in honor of the human who saved us. And the central research facility there will be dedicated to studying the unique perceptual abilities of humans, so that together we might hear other voices that have gone unnoticed in our galaxy." Applause and various signs of approval spread through the council chamber. Even species that had initially opposed human inclusion in the Concord had been impressed by humanity's actions. When Kelu finished, Elena was invited to speak. She had prepared a formal speech, but looking around at the assembled representatives of civilizations far older than humanity's, she decided to speak from the heart instead. "When I first detected the Nirval signal in my small observatory, I had no idea it would lead to this moment," she began. "I was simply doing what humans have always done, listening to the universe and trying to understand its patterns." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes, compound eyes, and sensory organs of the diverse beings. "We've learned that humans perceive the universe differently than your species. We detect patterns you cannot see, Hear frequencies you filter out and notice details that your technologies ignore. This isn't because we're superior. It's simply because we're different. Elena paused, thinking of Alexei and his sacrifice. But I believe the most important difference isn't in how we perceive. It's in how we respond to what we perceive. When humans hear a cry for help, something deep within us answers, even from strangers, even from those unlike us. Even when the cost is great. She gestured to the holographic display showing Earth and New Nirval. Humanity doesn't wish to conquer the stars or dominate other species. We simply want to add our voice and our unique perspective to this community. We want to help hear what others cannot hear, see what others cannot see, and together build a more perceptive and compassionate galaxy. As Elena finished speaking, something unprecedented happened in the council chamber. The representatives began to applaud, not just those who supported humanity, but all of them. Even those who had opposed human membership now recognized that the galaxy had changed forever with humanity's arrival. Later that day, as Elena prepared to return to the human embassy section of the station, she received a message from Dr. Zhang, who had returned to Earth to head the new Interstellar Research Division. Elena, Dr. Zhang's recorded message played. We've detected a new signal using the methods you developed. It's coming from a region the Concord has listed as uninhabited, but the pattern is unmistakable. It's artificial and it's repeating. I think someone else is calling for help. Elena looked out at the stars again, thinking about how much had changed since that night in her Finnish observatory, when she'd first heard the Nirval. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy not through conquest or technological superiority, but through something much simpler: the willingness to listen when no one else would, and the courage to answer when a call came. In Memorial Orbital, stations around both Earth and New Nirval, the same inscription glowed in multiple languages. No one heard us, except the humans, and that made all the difference. As Elena prepared to bring the news of this new signal to the Concord Council, she knew that humanity's journey among the stars was just beginning. There were more voices to hear, more patterns to discover, and more calls to answer. And humanity would be listening. The end.